Hello, and thank you for tuning in. How many of you have either seen me before or else this is your first time? All right, I guess that joke only really works in person. My name is John Weaver, and I have been in service to other people for pretty much my entire life. I've been an EMT, a firefighter, a police officer, a Marine, a school teacher, have a little bit of life experience. And I'm here today to talk to you about alcohol and underage drinking. So please don't change the channel, because I know that you wonder, as many of us do, why is there such a thing as underage drinking? Why is it illegal for me? And we're going to get to that in a minute. First thing I want to tell you is that according to the Center for Disease Control, alcohol is the most commonly used and abused drug among young people in the United States. More than tobacco, more than illicit drugs, and it's responsible for thousands of deaths annually. So, underage drinking. Why, at the age of 20 years, 11 months, 29 days, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds, is it illegal for me to drink, but the moment that clock tips over, and it's my birthday, my 21st birthday, it is now okay for me to walk into that bar, buy a round of drinks for everybody, or have everybody buy a round of drinks for me, it doesn't matter. Now I can do it legally. Why is that? There seems to be a double standard. There seems to be a lot of social acceptability of drinking. Maybe people in your family drink. I know my dad used to like a beer every once in a while. My mom likes a glass of wine. Heck, even grandma liked her gin and tonic from time to time. So why is it so bad for you, but okay for grown-ups? And what it has to do with is human physiology and the human brain. So, the human brain is an incredibly interesting and amazing organ. And it actually develops, if you look at the slide, check this out, it actually develops from back to front. So the front part of the brain is the last to fully develop. And it just so happens that the front part of the brain is where formal logic, reasoning, good decision making, that's the part of the brain that does that. So, if you take alcohol and you introduce it to that part of the brain while it's developing, some bad things could happen. You could slow that development. You could damage that development. Could you imagine a world where you are stuck at 50 years old with the decision-making capabilities of an 11-year-old boy? That is something that could happen. Now, I want to talk to you a minute as you consider that development of the brain. I want to talk to you about one of my heroes, and that is NFL coach Tony Dungy. Amazing human being, amazing coach, fantastic person. Has had a rough patch in his life from time to time, and he's always resilient. He always makes a comeback. He used to tell a story about his son Jordan. His son Jordan was born with a condition, very rare condition, that interrupted the flow of pain sensors from his body to his brain. So essentially, he felt no pain, which means, I could do anything I want, and I'm not going to have to pay the consequences of feeling pain for that. My first reaction to that was, wow, that would be so awesome. No back pain, no neck pain, no muscle cramps, all that stuff gone. But in reality, imagine what it would be like moving around in the world trying to figure out what's dangerous and not dangerous if you couldn't feel pain. You could pick up a piece of pizza fresh out of a 500-degree pizza oven, take a bite of it and swallow it, and burn every part of your mouth, your esophagus, all the way down to your stomach. That wouldn't be good. That could cause a lot of damage. And it's kind of the same thing with alcohol. If you damage that front part of your brain, you're possibly going to be leading a life where logical decision-making, good decision-making skills are not something that you're capable of doing. I can remember being in college, and I had a friend who shall remain nameless that when we were together, he would sometimes get crazy ideas of things he wanted to do. For example, one day we were walking, and the college that I went to, there were some railroad tracks and there was a train trestle, and he decided that he could beat the train approaching from the other side of the train trestle. He was going to be able to climb up onto the tracks, run across the trestle, come back down, beat the train. It would be really awesome. I tackled him halfway up the hill and said, "You're crazy." And as he looked up and saw the train was already at the trestle, he realized, oh my goodness, I would have died. Thank you. So my prefrontal cortex, my front lobe, was having a really good day that day, and I stopped him from making a decision that, quite honestly, would have ended his life. So, back to alcohol. What exactly is it? Well, a lot of people don't know this. There's 3 different types of alcohol. There's methyl alcohol, which is very flammable. We find that in antifreeze and some other commercial products. That's one you don't drink. That would be very bad. That will kill you. Another kind is isopropyl alcohol, and you find that in products like rubbing alcohol. Another bad idea. Don't drink that one. That'd be very bad for you. And the third kind is ethyl alcohol. And ethyl alcohol comes in a variety of delivery systems. And ethyl alcohol is the one that people drink. And some of these delivery systems are beer, wine, whiskey, tequila, comes in all sorts of different delivery systems. And when you drink these different delivery systems, they come in different sizes. Well, they come in different sizes for a reason. Beer is commonly served in 12 ounces, and it's roughly 5% alcohol. Malt liquor is served in about 8 to 9 ounce servings. And that is really popular right now. That's all those seltzers and all those crazy things out on the market. That's about 7% alcohol by volume. Wine, about 3.5 to 5 ounces of wine is considered a serving, and that's somewhere around 12% alcohol. And then you have your harder alcohols, your whiskeys, tequilas, things like that. Those are usually somewhere around 40% alcohol. Now, when you look at a bottle of alcohol, it'll say 40% on there somewhere, but it's a proof content, like in the harder alcohol. So 80 proof is actually 40% alcohol. You just cut that in half. So what does that mean to you? Well, what that means to you and most human beings is when you have 1 drink of alcohol, that is going to raise your blood alcohol level approximately 0.012 to 0.015% of alcohol in your blood by volume. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. So when I say percent of alcohol by volume in your blood, what we're talking about, those numbers, you've heard people say, well, he was legally drunk. Well, I really don't know what that means, because I think you're illegally drunk, but we'll say legally drunk. So if you're driving a car and you're over the age of 21, if your blood alcohol level is above a 0.08, you are considered to be legally drunk, legally intoxicated, and you're going to get arrested for DUI. If you're under the age of 21, in the state of Pennsylvania anyway, if your blood alcohol level is above a 0.02, you are going to be arrested for DUI. So what happens is 1 drink, 0.012 to 0.015% of alcohol, it's going to raise your blood level that much. In exactly 1 hour from the time you introduce that alcohol into your body, your liver will have processed that alcohol, it'll metabolize that alcohol, flushed it out of your system, and you'll be back to a 0. All right, so every time you take a drink, you go up somewhere from 0.012 to 0.015. Every hour that you don't drink, your blood alcohol will start to come back down by that same amount. So if you have multiple drinks in a short amount of time, you're going to raise your blood alcohol level higher than maybe what you probably should. The reason I'm telling you this is you need to pay attention to yourself and to people around you. So if somebody is drinking, this happens a lot. somebody's drinking and they binge drink, which is when you have more than 4 or 5 drinks in a short period of time, they consider that, or in one sitting, they consider that to be binge drinking. So if you're binge drinking and you drink yourself up, say to a 0.18, a 0.20, that's really, really drunk, in case you didn't know. And what will happen a lot of times is people will drink to a level where they are, a 0.15, a 0.16, and then they will go home and they will go to bed. And they'll wake up a few hours later, or they'll stay at the party, which is a really good decision. They'll wake up a few hours later and they'll get behind the wheel of a car and they'll drive home. And unfortunately, many times something bad happens. And I have a little story about that that's going to come up later. So what happens is, if you get up to about a 0.15, a 0.16 while you're binge drinking, and you go to sleep for 3 or 4 hours, the common misconception is, I slept, I'm sober, I'm good to go. But in reality, if you are a 0.15 and you go to sleep for 4 hours, and your body is able to eliminate 0.012 per hour, 0.012 times 4 is 0.048. So when you wake up and you get behind the wheel of a car, your blood alcohol level is still well above the legal limit, and you are still drunk, and you are still going to make decisions like you're drunk, and that's going to lead to some bad things. So, why do young people drink? I did some research on this and I found some really interesting answers. And peer pressure makes the list. A lot of young folks will give in to peer pressure and they will have a drink because everybody's telling them to do it. Some will drink because they just want to look cool, and doesn't television and the movies really make it look cool when somebody has a drink in their hand? They show these bar scenes and these nightclub scenes and everybody's just having a blast and it's awesome and beautiful and bright lights, and bars are like nothing like that at all. And the number one reason that people drink is because, or young people drink, is because they want to have fun, right? They want to have fun. So when you drink and you binge drink, or you drink a lot, let's see what happens. You have fun. You get sick to your stomach. You make poor decisions. You can't walk real well. Your speech gets slurred. And sometimes you throw up. And that's a lot of fun, right? If you take a look at the girl in this slide, she is absolutely having a blast. There is nobody on the planet who is having more fun than she is at this particular moment, except maybe this guy. He is absolutely having a blast. I wish I was him right now, don't you? This guy, wow, he's the life of the party. What party? There's nobody around him. Do you know why there's nobody around him? Because when people are that drunk, they're annoying and nobody else wants to be around them. Sometimes there are some bad things that happen when people drink. The overwhelming majority of sexual assaults that happen to young women happen because alcohol was involved. Over 70% of the young women that have been sexually assaulted report that either they were drunk, he was drunk, or they were both drunk. Fun, right? Sexually transmitted infections. If you take a look at this one, that's a herpes infection. That on the world of STIs is relatively mild, and that's a mouth, okay? Because this is a family show and I can't show you what that would look like when you get it somewhere else. But again, that's a relatively mild STI. 60% of college girls who reported being infected with an STI also reported that they were intoxicated when it happened. Alcohol is so much fun. I love it. I love it. Okay? Look at this guy. He's having a blast. He's just sleeping it off. Because, like I said earlier, alcohol is the #1 cause of death of people your age. And sure, it might be car crashes. It might be car crashes. I spent a great majority of time, almost 10 years of my life, investigating nothing but fatal car crashes. And I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of them, alcohol was a factor. But guess what? That's not the only way that people die from alcohol. An alarming number of teen deaths revolve around homicides while people are intoxicated. You've heard of beer muscles and beer pride? It leads to bad things. And not just murders. Sometimes, sadly, unfortunately, when people drink alcohol, they get sad, very, very sad. And it absolutely makes sense that they would, because alcohol is a central nervous system depressant, which means this idea, this concept of drinking alcohol in order to have fun makes zero sense. Because as you drink, and as you drink more, you begin to depress your brain and your body, and you get sad. And then sometimes people make a decision to do things that are irreversible. Additionally, some other fun facts for you about why alcohol is so much fun. Teenagers, those folks under the age of 21 that drink, are 5 times more likely to be adult alcoholics. Teenagers, again, those folks under the age of 21 that drink. And I'm not picking on teenagers, guys. I love teenagers. I got 6 of them in my house. But when you drink under the age of 21 with that not fully formed brain, you confuse it, because you're dumping this massive amount of depressants into your system. In your brain, right? Your brain's pretty smart. After all, it is the only organ in the human body that named itself. It's pretty smart. And what it tries to do is counterbalance this depressant. So you're dumping depressants in, and your brain's thinking, whoa, we don't want to be depressed. So it starts pumping out happy hormones. And then all of a sudden there's too many of those, and it starts to pump out not so happy hormones. It's trying to balance you out. And all the while you're dumping alcohol in. And when your brain's not fully developed, you can actually program or teach your brain to constantly be in this state of trying to balance itself, and it never will. So again, alcohol is fun. I'm going to tell you some stories now about how alcohol and young people drinking has affected my life. And I wish that this list was all inclusive, but very, very sadly it is not. First person I'm going to tell you about is my cousin David. And I was 7 years old when my cousin David was killed. And I remember vividly the night he died. My parents were supposed to go out on a date, and they were all ready, and they were leaving, and I was super excited because my favorite aunt, who was about 15 years old, was coming to babysit me. And I thought, can't wait, because we always have fun when Aunt Karen's here. And I remember the garage door going up, and I ran and I opened the door for her to come in the house, and she was a mess. She was crying, she was incoherent, and she had just found out that David had been killed in a drunk driving accident. I remember going to the funeral. First dead body I ever saw in a casket. I remember seeing the bruises on his face that they tried to cover with makeup. I remembered how unnatural he looked. I remembered the bruises on his hands. I think about him a lot, and how that one event has affected my life. And David had 5 brothers, and how that affected their lives. And my aunt, his mom, she wept over him, I would say daily, from 1978 until she passed away in 2018. 8 years later, had a great guy from my neighborhood. His name was Louie. He was my brother's best friend. They were inseparable. My brother's older than me, which means Louie was older than me. And I was that pain in the butt younger brother who was just old enough to be allowed to go out. Younger brother. I was just old enough to be allowed to go out and hang out with them, but I wasn't allowed to be on my own. So my brother, who hated it, had to take me with him everywhere he went. And his friend Louie treated me like an equal. I loved this guy. Always took care of me. He was one incredible athlete, fantastic baseball player, went to college on a baseball scholarship. When he walked in a room, I know people say this all the time, but when he walked in a room, the whole atmosphere changed. He was fantastic. In 1987, in June, he was home from college. He went to a graduation party, and he drank too much. And he left that party, and he drove his car into the side of a building. And he drove a Jeep. And he suffered massive head trauma. And he held on for a couple of days. They had to drill holes in his head, take a portion of his skull off to try and relieve some of the pressure. It's the last image his mom, dad had of him was him laying in that hospital bed. And I remember going to Louie's funeral. And I remember they buried him in his baseball uniform. Two years after that, my best friend growing up, his name was Roy. And this was actually the first car crash that I went to as a public servant. I was a junior firefighter, and this car crash came in just before midnight. And I jumped on the fire truck and we went racing to the scene. And when we got there and I looked in the car, I was actually holding I wasn't allowed to do much, so I was holding a light while they cut the roof and the doors off the car. And at first, I recognized a kid who was trapped in the back seat. And then as they got the driver out, then I recognized him. This car was loaded with 5 people that I went to high school with, 5 friends of mine. And what had happened is they were going a little bit too fast. They lost control. They went sideways, and a car coming the other way smashed right into the passenger side of the car, and it killed Roy pretty much instantly. And I remember going to his funeral and how innocent he looked and how young he looked, and his mom and how she cried and how his dad cried. And now Roy and his dad, they were the quintessential outdoorsmen. You know, they were the rugged, tough, manly type. And to see his dad in that state is something that I'll never forget. That's just a little bit of my life experience. I'm going to tell you one more story because I started to mention it earlier when I talked about being at that party and thinking that after a certain amount of time, all that alcohol has left your body. And I'm not going to use any names in this one. I'm just going to refer to the volleyball player and the wrestler. And this is just a few years ago. I was still doing crash reconstructions. They were at a party together, and they kind of knew each other from school. And the volleyball player was a junior, and the wrestler was a senior. And he had a full ride wrestling scholarship. Everything, room, board, books, everything paid for to WVU. He was going to go to West Virginia University, and he was going to wrestle for them, and they were going to pay for his college. They were at a party together, and they were drinking. And the volleyball player got into a fight with her boyfriend. And the wrestler, he got into a fight with his girlfriend. And time wore on, and the night grew later, and they decided, the volleyball player and the wrestler decided that they were going to leave, and the wrestler was going to give her a ride home. And I will tell you this, your life can change in an instant. And not just your life, but the life of everybody that knows you everybody that cares about you, and even some people who don't know you. You'll change their lives in a couple of milliseconds. It takes a human being 150 milliseconds to close their eye when they blink and about 200 milliseconds to open it when they blink, so about 350 milliseconds. Most car crashes take about 150 to 300 milliseconds to happen. So when I'm telling you that your life can change in a few milliseconds, I'm not lying to you. These two left that party. They were driving down a country road. Volleyball player rolls her window down because I can only assume she wasn't feeling very good, and she kind of had her head out the window. And for a few milliseconds, the wrestler lost track of where he was on the road. He went off the road, hit a guardrail, and he went off the road just far enough that the side of his truck clipped a tree. But remember, her head was out that window, and her head caught the tree full force, and it killed her. I wish that I made all these stories up. I wish that it was all fantasy, but it's not. And if you don't take the time to think about what you're doing and to have a plan of action for when you do go to the party, a momentary lapse in judgment can not just change your life, it can end your life. And the pain and suffering that goes along with that for everybody else that knew you, for everybody else that has to come to the crash scene or the murder scene or any other scene, can be devastating. So what do I mean by have a plan? I went to parties when I was in high school. I loved to go to parties when I was in high school. But I knew very early on in my high school career that I was going to join the United States Marine Corps. And I knew that if I got into trouble, I was going to put that in jeopardy. So what did I do? I went to the parties and I took my own beer because I knew that if I took my own beer, nobody was going to slip me anything. I wasn't going to get over intoxicated. I was going to be in control. And I'm going to tell you the brand of beer that I took, and this is no way, shape, or form a plug or any type of advertisement for this particular brand of beer. As a matter of fact, I still drink it today. I have a few at home in my fridge waiting for me for when I get there. And that brand of beer is A&W. And I used to think, first time I did it, I was a little scared. People are going to make fun of me because I'm taking root beer to a party. And pretty soon, party or two down the road, I wasn't the only one bringing a six-pack of A&W root beer with me. Other people were doing it too, and we had just as much fun. So that's my advice to you. Understand what I'm talking about here. Understand that, a lot of people in life will say it's never going to happen to me. That's somebody else's problem. Well, I told you that list is not all inclusive. There are some other folks in my life and from my high school and college days who were killed as a result of alcohol. It can happen to you. I hope that it doesn't. I pray that it doesn't. I stand up here and I tell you that I care about you. I know that this is a little bit of a strange time and in a strange environment. I'm up here on a video screen and not face-to-face in a school, but I care about every one of you. If you took the time to tune into this video and you're actually trying to get something out of it, I absolutely care about you. I want you to survive. I want you to live your best life. I want you to live life to the fullest. So please, think about it, have a plan, and don't be afraid to follow through with that plan. Thank you.